wants to submit.
Access that, yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. So coming towards the end of the interview now, and not to end on a really angry note, because I don't want to talk about things that are just purely enrageous. So I wanted to talk about the relationship between your poetry, your writing, and your myriad other forms of creative making, because you're illustrating and painting and drawing and sculpting and collaging and embroidering these fantastic mushrooms at the moment, which sound sound extremely exciting. And it's a wonderfully various practice, with deep roots and many, many branches. So I'd be really interested to know if you feel that these different aspects of your creativity spring from the same source. I mean, if they have a kind of symbiotic relationship, if they're kind of feeding off each other, or if they're, in some ways, they're competing for energy and attention. And do you ever feel sort of overwhelmed by the sheer profusion and intensity of your creativity? Because I feel exhausted by the sheer profusion and intensity of my creativity, and mine is not even at a level that is the same as yours. You are a waterfall. I am like a trickle from the coffee dispenser in comparison.
I'm a waterfall as well. No, it is exhausting, because I've always had a massive drive to empty my head, and I always wonder at what point my head will ever be empty, and I haven't even hit it yet. So every day it just feels like you have to empty your head of these ideas. That just so many ideas. I mean, life's amazing, and everything makes me think about 25 other things, which makes me think about 25 other things. I can't even look at a pair of curtains without, things just going on. So your head is full. My head's a separate entity. Like that film, what's the film? I think it's I can't remember what it is, where the people, their heads come off and they float away, and their heads are like these cerebral things, and their bodies are like these base things that just carry on. I can't remember which film it is. It might come to me later. But I feel like that, like the head's is this separate thing, and it just keeps thinking these things. I just think, oh, it's full. My head is full again. I've got to take some stuff out. I have to take some stuff out and make some space, and then almost instantly the space is filled again with something else. But I think that it works in very separate ways. Obviously, creativity is creativity, no matter what you're doing, fundamentally, whether it's writing or drawing or whatever. But the poetry takes all the intensity and the pain and the realism. The poetry is all the knives and nails and the noise and the rattling things and the injustice and the opinions. The poetry takes the brunt of that. That's where it goes. And I don't deliberately think I'm going to channel that there. It just seems to be that is the right medium for removing that part of my head at that time. The art is just all about how beautiful things are, the beauty of things, the pleasure of things, the beauty of colour, of pattern, of painting nature or painting people or painting animals. It's just purely pleasure, absolute pleasure. So I don't tend, I have once in a blue moon painted something that's, dark, but it's very, very rare that any darkness gets channeled into the art, and I think that a separate part of me goes into that. There's a line in one of the poems in Be Feared where I say the garden is where I waste my tenderness, because I love gardening too, and all the love, the overwhelming, touching feeling that I have an urge to put on people, which obviously I know I can't because everyone has boundaries, and I know I can be very overwhelming. So I take my physicality and my feelings that I am overwhelming, and I put it into the gardening. So that's another, it's like pulling parts of yourself away, and each of these, each of these brackets of art take a different part of me away. And then obviously the embroideries, they're something that comes when I'm at the end of everything, and I'm very stressed and I'm very agitated, and I just have an urge for the simple act of sewing, the in and out, the repetition of the sewing, the act of sewing itself. I mean, yes, you can then sew pretty things or whatever, but the complexity of embroidery stitches, some of them are incredibly complex, like the bullion knot and things like that. And I just repeat them. And that takes a lot of the stress out of myself. And I feel just emptied when I've sewn. So it's not so much about making it, the act of repetition is beautiful in sewing. So that takes like another part of myself away. So they're all very, very necessary. I couldn't choose one. He said you can only do one thing. I mean, if my back was against the wall and I had to choose one, it would have to be poetry. Because I can absorb feelings of beauty. What I cannot keep absorbing is what comes out into the poems. That has to leave you, or it become very toxic, I think, for you if you didn't have an outlet for those kind of emotions. So they're sort of all necessary, but it's kind of separate, which is strange. But I have to do each of them at different times for different needs.
They're fulfilling, they're responding to different needs. I get that poetry gets the knives. I feel, it's all the stuff that you can't process any other way. It's the only form. I think all language is kind of just the imperfect way of straining all of this shit, lived experience and trauma. All language is like that, but poetry is the best and the closest we've come to being able to contain and articulate that. And I don't know why that is, but it just is. I think
poetry just does that. I mean, I don't know what the explanation, I'm sure somebody could explain it brilliantly, but I can't. It's just, that is where all that stuff goes. And poetry is the perfect bucket to throw those feelings in. It just really is. Yeah,
it is. I mean, I tried to sort of, because I did my PhD looking at sort of poetry and grief and trauma, and I spent a long time trying to investigate why poetry and why the kind of poetry that I do in particular. And I spent, like 4 years trying to figure out why. And I still don't know why. In fact, I somehow managed to, I know less, and I'm less sure now than when I went in, but it does. And I'm just happy that it is working. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically. So to kind of to finish off, I wanted to mention a little bit about neurodiversity, particularly as a kind of motor for creativity, and the extent to which your late diagnosis has helped you to kind of contextualize and articulate some of the stuff you've just been talking about, that kind of the need to empty the head and to have this kind of extremely various, extremely prolific practice.
Well, I think in a nutshell, really, what I have said to you now, before the diagnosis, I would not have been able to say to you. I mean, it's been a couple of years now. I think it's almost been a couple of years. I can't remember. I could look it up, but I forget because dates aren't so important. But I've spent a long time learning how to articulate what it is I am actually feeling. And the way I've just spoken to you is the result of, a couple of years of thinking, thinking. It's not just something that sort of popped out of my mouth. Now it's something that's, it's given me permission to have these thoughts. Whereas before, I didn't think they were thoughts I had permission to have. I didn't have permission to access it or travel along these lines because that's not me. But then you get this diagnosis and, you know, your counsellors and your family, you know, your pets even, your mirror, they see a you that no one else sees. Because, you know, when I learned about cloaking, how we cloak ourselves, I mean, that caused me at least a fortnight of extreme distress because I felt like I was being hit with feelings I didn't know I had until I read that and knew that that's what I do. And it gave me permission to grieve and cry because I know when I look back, I've been doing that. So there's a heck of a lot of processing going on now and looking back and thinking, you know, I did that. And until somebody named it, I didn't know I was doing it, which sounds silly. Like you say, surely you knew you were doing it. But it's no, because I didn't know it had a name.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing. Until you start sort of looking and researching into yourself and then being very honest with yourself, you know, and I thought, oh, all the years I've tried to write and I've tried to use the correct punctuation, I've tried to use good grammar, I've tried to learn good grammar and learn punctuation, I've tried to put those building blocks in. And now I think, hell, they're not in, so fuck, excuse my French. Don't care if they're not in because it's me. The me who I am is the me who writes how she writes. So it's changed my writing massively in that I'm still the same person who loves words and loves a beautiful image or a metaphor or a simile and just has such a pure joy in her writing. That's still me, but it's me free since then. So I'm going to write poems that don't even have punctuation because that is how little it's meant to me in my life. And instead of feeling bad about that or ashamed of that, oh no, I'm going to celebrate that. And no one's going to tell me I shouldn't. And you think, yes, obviously, people love grammar. It's got its place, obviously. I'm not going to denigrate people who love grammar. But on the other hand, the grammar police, you know, when you go on a website where people are mocking somebody's grammar, like an apostrophe in the wrong, oh my goodness, this is just terrible. And they all have a titter about it. And I think, you don't know what that person's education's been. You don't know what that person's mental health issues are. You don't know what that person, how that person sees life. And if he's put an apostrophe in the wrong place or not used one, so what? That doesn't affect you. You use exactly the kind of apostrophe you want to use, but leave that person alone until you've walked in that person's shoes. They're not a source of mockery. And I find that it crosses a line into mockery. You're mocking a human for a mistake you think they've made, whereas they might not think they've made it. So that is something that runs through my new work. And some of it is very, I mean, I have changed a lot of it since you last read them. I'll have to send you it again because it is in a constant state of flux. It has to stop fluxing because it's going to have to go to the printers at some point. But it's this new broom. It's the sweeping. It's the tools. And every time you just think, yes, that's so much how I wanted to say it. I didn't even know this a week ago. I mean, one of the poems is an absolute praise poem to a funny little picture I saw. It was before lockdown, so it will have been a couple of years ago. I went to Miss Olmroyd. I've probably mispronounced it, near Hebden Bridge, and I went to a little reading there, and it was in a church hall, and there was this amazing picture of a pair of trowels, ceremonial trowels that had been used to lay some foundation stone or something. It was just a really funny little photo. And at the bottom, it just said the ceremonial trowels used that, but they put trowel apostrophe S. And I fell in love with that picture, and no one was there to see it. And I put my cheek against that picture and I told it I loved it. And it made me happy. And I just thought, if I could take this picture home, I would, and I would hang it on my wall, because this is everything that someone might mock, but everything that is right to me about being human and being who you are. And a mistake is only a mistake if someone believes it's one. And who's to say what a mistake is? And I'm not saying we shouldn't try and teach. I mean, but I'm going to say try and teach correct grammar. What's correctness? What is correct? Everyone's so unique and different. And I just wrote this massive praise poem about this rogue apostrophe. And I'd be interested to know how some of these poems go down, to be honest, for their absolute celebration and rebellion against rules of any sort of kind. That's all happened since my diagnosis. I mean, there's a lot of darker stuff where you have to keep trawling back through your life and look at it again with a fresh pair of eyes and understand things, why you did certain things, and what the result of them were, why you used to scream, why you used to sweep all the pots off the draining board, why you used to hammer the cupboards with a potato masher and leave great big divots in them, and why you used to make, and why did you used to sit up and scream and things like that. There are darker sides to it, obviously. But it's going to take a long time to bring all that to the fore, and obviously, touching on the breakdown of family relationships, the rejection of my family makes some kind of sense now. And the fact that there's Manny, someone at the door.
Your daddy ordered that. Thank you. Shush.
Oh, bless him.
Pause a minute. There we go.
I like the last bark there when you said, "Have you stopped?" Woof.
Woof. Yeah, no, I haven't.
No, I've stopped. Yeah, one of my dogs, the little girl one, she's much more barky, and she does that. You'll say shh, 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 and then 5 seconds after the last shush, woof.
Yeah, exactly. Just, I'm still here. I'm still here, Mom.
Yeah. So yeah.
Just agreeing with you. I think he's agreeing with you.
Yeah, I think so. So re-examining the breakdown of family, my relationship with my mother and things like that has been extremely difficult. And I suppose, I've been the sort of the weird one, the funny one, all the stories they used to tell. Remember when Jane used to go to piano lessons and ignore the teacher for an hour and stare at a spot at the ceiling and things like that. And they, it was funny to them, but obviously it's not really funny. It was just something that was missed completely for me. And, I don't know if those relationships can ever be repaired because we're no longer in contact. I don't even know where they live. So, it's one of those impossible things. And if they couldn't accept me then, what would change now in a way? So that is yet another thing that has to be looked at with these new eyes that I feel like I've been given. And I think it's just getting more open about it. It's taken a lot of courage to be more open about it because, the first people I told said, "No, you're not. You're not." And blotting it, it went very sort of bad and it put me off telling anybody because, there's not many people I have on Facebook who've met me in real life. And, you see this sort of sanitize me. I've become very good with the delete button. And sometimes I write these terrible statuses and I will delete them. Or I'll delete them after an hour, or they make me feel uncomfortable, so I delete them. So they're seeing a sort of sanitized me. They don't see the difficulties because you don't. You don't film them, put them up, the difficulties you're having and the difficulties in your relationships and the everyday, you don't see those. But, this is hopefully the start of me becoming much more confident and open about it. So you know, that's the influence, is the honesty it's given, the admission of it, and the honesty, and then becomes a celebration too. I think of it, you know, dark and light. Yeah,
definitely. And just the sheer sort of exuberance and the beauty that you're able to find, and the fact that you have a totally unique perspective, that you don't think like everybody else. It's, you know, I mean, Kida, my brother, is also autistic, and he, you know, I don't know anyone with a mind like that, for good or ill. You know, the way he puts thoughts together, the way he forms thoughts, the way he maps meaning onto the world is completely different. And it's also completely different from me, who have my own issues, which we'll diplomatically refer to as issues. But it makes you who you are, and it's a place where poetry comes from, and it's also something that poetry interacts with and deals with, and it's a place you can put all that.
yes,
it's kind of connected to that. So it's simultaneously terrible and wonderful, which at least it's not king boring. I don't have to resort to writing like terrible poems about where I went on my holiday to Tuscany and the red wine I had as the sunset, and that, you know, I'm not forced to doing that, because that to me would be death, you know.
yeah. I mean, it's helping me celebrate the smallness of my life, because it is quite a small life. I do realise that, especially since the pandemic, where apart from obviously the horror of the deaths and the worry and the terrible, you know, thing that it is, goes straight alongside of me never having been happier.
Yeah.
Because I haven't had to go anywhere. The streets have been empty. The shop, I mean, it's becoming different now. It's becoming the same sort of stressful place that it was before. But you know, I haven't had to worry about my son going anywhere, because they haven't been allowed to go anywhere. So all the murder, death worries, the road crash worries that attach the minute he leaves the house, I have to absolutely sit in front of a wall of fear and pain and terror, which you might think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not, until he sets foot back in the house. I've been spared that. I've been spared worrying about my husband going taxi driving. I don't have to stay awake till 5 a.m. for a click in the door, which says he hasn't been bumped on the head or crashed or something. You know, all those things were removed, and that's never happened for so long. I mean, 19 years I've been married, and my son's 17, and that's a lot of years to hold and not realise you were never getting the break from those relentless worries. So they were removed, and I think that's freed up. It sounds awful, because, you know, that there was all these narratives on Facebook. You were either supposed to be massively creative, look what I'm doing, or you were supposed to be down on the people who were being creative. Oh, they're terrible, they're not real, they're not really feeling it, because they're not totally tied up and unable to create. So seemed like there were two camps. You were damned if you did, and you were damned if you didn't. And I didn't like that. I used to see it a lot on social media, you know, the person who's baking and putting up recipes. And I think, well, ultimately they're just trying to survive in their own way as well. You know, and if they are spurred on to create, to get fit, to bake, to paint a wall, I don't know, good for them. If you cannot do those things, then that's fine too. But it was the fact that these people were saying, you should be doing all this creating. And these people were saying, you shouldn't be doing all this creating. You should be suffering and unable to create. Create, don't create. And it became really strange. And I just thought, I'm checking out of both these narratives. And I am just going to be who I am and survive in my own way. Which was just to keep doing and doing and doing, because I was free. for the first time in more than a decade, of feelings I didn't know I was suffering from.
Yeah.
So that had a big impact on the writing as well, I think, and on the art, which got progressively happier and happier, happier and happier and brighter and more colourful. I mean, I've written about it in a poem, you know, and to say that you are happier than you've ever been in the middle of something so horrific. Yes, I do wonder what people are going to think of me for saying that, you know, because that's going to make some people think I'm a terrible person. But I am very separate from my feelings because I'm autistic. I am not going to feel things the same way. I have to try to feel things sometimes with regard to other people, not myself. I can, you know, wax lyrical about myself till the cows come home.
Yeah.
Call me selfish, I don't know. But, you know, when you're on, I like to go through Facebook on my phone because I use predictive text to make you sound like a human being, you know. And you have to make yourself care sometimes, which is difficult admissions, but I'm not going to tell you everything's positive about me. Yes, I do love. If I love, it's horrific as well. It's like an overwhelming, it's like throwing a kind of orange paint against a white wall. You know, that's what being loved by me is. It's just as terrifying, really. So it touches on things like that as well. And I'm writing another collection after this as well, which is digging even deeper, I suppose, into those kinds of feelings too. But that's enough waffle.
It's not waffle. It's, you know, I think that a lot of people listening are also going to be able to identify with that, you know, people, everyone has their own, just like you were saying earlier, you know, and we don't know what's going on in someone else's life. We can't possibly know. People have all these judgments and all these kind of like prescriptive little lists of behavior and assumptions, but nobody knows what's going on. And the stuff that we like to think that we know what's going on because we can see a version of that person, but who puts the orange paint and the white wall stuff online? Who puts the terrible hours of accumulating darkness? No, nobody. Or, you know, you do, and then people tell you they don't like it, so you take it away and you feel bad about it and you feel bad about yourself. But nobody is seeing that. It's only a tenth of the iceberg that's ever showing. And I think to have this discussion, it's actually a really powerful and positive thing for other people, and it's wonderful that you were able to come and have this conversation with me. I feel, you know, really kind of privileged and like that it's actually important, and it's important for other people too. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on and listening.
It's been fantastic. You're going to read some poems to read us out, yeah?
Yes. Well, what should I do? Should I? Because I've read the Be Feared one, and then I had earmarked 3, but I don't want to overread, so I don't know. I mean, shall I just read them and you can?
3 is perfect. 3 is a perfect number of poems.
Right. Okay. So this poem was written about a beautiful Methodist church. I say beautiful because they're usually incredibly unbeautiful, but I see the beauty of them. I mean, I was raised a Methodist. I went to Sunday school every Sunday. I was a brownie, I was a guide. So they have a place in my heart, you know, for good or for bad or for both. So when I see one, I can immediately picture the plain white walls, the unadorned cross, you know, the swirly red carpet, the plain pews, you know, that it's very redolent for me. And when I moved to our winter home in Ledgate in County Durham, which is an ex-mining village, and round the corner from our house was this Methodist chapel, and I thought, wow, maybe I should go. Maybe I should, you know, go to a service every now and then. And it had been closed. It was closed. It had been closed down like most churches are these days, and now it's an office. It's been sold on and it's an office. So I would never have the chance, but I used to try and peer through the windows and push the door. So I wrote this sort of poem, which was inspired by that situation. It's called Look at Me, Lingering Outside This Murdered Church. Open your lids, you coal smut bitter thing. Undraw the blind that your plunged doom has set in the lead of your eyes. Too many years of chimneys licking their filth on your bricks. Nobody comes to pluck at your weeds. Look at the pair of us, our cabins unused. Methodists didn't build for beauty, face like a mortuary slab, barren grim of harsh white walls. Let me in and I'll sing you some saints. God, for me, has not been enough. If I am to believe, daub me some vivid grief, gouge this wasted cave with a burning of sacred hearts. I will treat this bare render with my own crude litter of faith. You were laboured foundations up by your devout, by the skill of women and men. They met and worshipped past the plain small wealth of the humble plate. Against your shell, I hear the memory of Sunday school, feel the holy flattening of my arse after hours spent pressed to the hardwood seat, colouring between the lines of gentle Jesus, playing with the brittle fin of simple twisted palm. Thus we were made by a plain religion. I craved the gibber of rosaries, the veils, the fondant of communion gowns, the thurible swinging the fume of dedication up, the wailing visions of virgin smalt, the tabernacle with its myth of Saviour's blood. My prayers will splatter your emptied crypt with a mess of devotion. My hymns are huge. I am an exorcism. I'm here to spew my devils at your altar's feet. Did not expect to find the slam and hasp of ailing Gothic doors. I make what I think is the requisite sign, poking my relic of belly and tits. An empty cross to show that I already suffered and won. Open up, you barred and bolted thing.
That's wonderful.
That's that one. And this next poem was inspired by a real life situation where last spring we fought a fire that had started on the site here and had took a hold of one of the cabins, and there was nobody on the site but us. So me and my husband and my stepson and my son, we went and fought the fire, and it kind of inspired this poem. Self-portrait as an inferno. I saw the birthing of a crazy phoenix, saw it raise hackles of fire, span bright wings of pain, sear the night with a flock of sparks. It made a spear of embers and flew its pyre into the night, crackled with vicious feathers, spat its language of waste from an orange tongue. I looked square in its red cleft beak, saw a gizzard drunk with boiling doom, saw it arm the flew of its neck with bellyfuls of apocalypse. This blistered bird pegged talons to my cheeks and infiltrated every breath with filth. I've had uglier meat than you down my scalded throat, I crowed and beat my voice against the smouldered void. My pupils rolled wide as dark wheels. I wore the shape of flames upon my eyes, doused greedy tinder beneath each blink, met its furnace and found that I was not afraid. Have been through worse, I hissed into its scorching ear, then watered vessels full, and bore it a cure of moon bucket pools to quench its rage, wore its shroud of vengeful smoke like my own defiant coat. I cursed it in its own kindled speech, grew hooded with dust, tasted reeking night, and lapped the dry well of my parchy mouth, looked towards my aftermath of filthy hair, and frowned the colour of fumes. I saw the mark of evil flight upon my skin, was alive through the night, had flickered with angels, made a soiled font of my face. I was an echo of waste, built from tomorrow's cold remains. And the last one I'm going to read is one where I mentioned before about the menial minutiae of life can become a sort of metaphor for so much else. This is Mrs. Mother, hail. Mrs. Mother, blessed art the window panes. Oh, keep us from the lure of dust. Forgive this hankering for distant lanes. Give us brave archangels of morning sun. Mrs. Mother, hail the dull bulb of scratched spoons, for we must lift the humility of soup. Oh, deliver us from the sin of bread, excuse the rough palm, its trespassing of skin. Mrs. Mother, oh, let us learn the hollow curse of curdled pans, the evil celibacy of the washing up, the everlasting weight of a dowager's hump. Lead us not into the drowning of knives. Mrs. Mother, oh, pity thy uncovered fruit, pray for the sake of one small brown bruise, for the baptism of potatoes, for the hour of their laying bare, the mining of sprouted eyes. Mrs. Mother, oh, speak as one who stoops to crumbs, glory for the cumber of a used womb. Have mercy upon the quiet chapel of upturned cups. Suffer the bowls foam, the smell of grass. Mrs. Mother, oh, rise before such nights of bleak glass, light without end, and light and light and light, and forever there shall be the sight of birds, invisible tastes of water. Amen. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
And thanks everybody for joining us.
Yes, I hope you enjoy it.